There are moments in baseball that happen on the field, under the lights, in front of 50,000 people. And then there are moments that happen in the quiet of a locker room, after the crowd has gone home, when the cameras are off and the performance is over and the only people left are the ones who have to live with what just happened. Those are the moments that define a team. Not the victories. Not the highlight plays. The moments in the silence after a loss, when someone is sitting at their locker staring at the floor, and another person walks across the room and says something that changes everything. Freddie Freeman was sitting at his locker. The double play was still replaying in his mind. The kind of at-bat that a hitter of Freeman's caliber, a World Series champion, a batting champion, one of the most respected offensive players of his generation, does not easily let go of. The kind of moment that follows you home, that sits with you at dinner, that wakes you up at 3 in the morning asking questions you cannot answer. He had not spoken to anyone. The locker room was doing what locker rooms do after hard losses, moving quietly, carefully, everyone processing in their own way, everyone giving each other the space that these moments require. And then Shohei Ohtani walked across the room. What he said to Freeman in that moment, what Freeman later revealed to the American media, visibly emotional as he recounted it, did not make the headlines the way the double play did. It did not generate the instant reaction that Tyler Glasnow's comments about being pulled in the 6th inning generated. But it revealed something about Ohtani that statistics cannot capture and highlight reels cannot show. It revealed the kind of teammate he is when no one is supposed to be watching. To understand what happened in that locker room, you first need to understand what Freeman had just been through on the field. The situation was the kind that baseball manufactures specifically to test character. Late in a game that mattered. Runners on base. The score close enough that one swing could change everything. Freeman stepping into the box carrying the weight of the moment the way only experienced postseason players truly understand how to carry it, not ignoring it, not pretending it isn't there, but absorbing it and trying to convert it into something useful. He did not convert it. The double play was devastating in its completeness. Not a close play, not a hard-hit ball that found the wrong glove at the wrong moment, the kind of double play that leaves a hitter with no argument to make to himself afterward. The kind that simply happens, and leaves silence where momentum used to be. Freeman is not a player who makes excuses. His entire career has been built on accountability, on the understanding that the game gives you what it gives you, and your job is to respond to both the gifts and the failures with the same fundamental steadiness. He has spoken publicly throughout his career about the importance of that steadiness. About not letting the highs carry you too far or the lows pull you under. But there are moments when steadiness is harder than it sounds. When the weight of what just happened in front of 50,000 people, in a game that the entire team needed, sits on your chest in a way that steadiness alone cannot immediately lift. This was one of those moments. And Freeman sat at his locker, alone with it, while the locker room moved quietly around him. Shohei Ohtani does not make a public performance of his leadership. This is one of the things that people who have spent significant time around him consistently note. He does not hold court in the clubhouse. He does not deliver speeches. He does not position himself visibly as the team's emotional anchor in ways that generate attention for his leadership rather than results for the team. What he does instead is quieter and, by the accounts of his teammates, far more effective. He pays attention. He watches. He notices things that players in the center of their own experience sometimes miss about the people around them. And when he identifies a moment where someone needs something, not a grand gesture, not a public acknowledgement, but something real and specific and human, he moves toward it rather than away from it. Walking across a locker room after a hard loss to sit with a teammate who is struggling is not a complicated act. It does not require exceptional emotional intelligence to recognize that Freeman needed someone to acknowledge what he was carrying. What makes it meaningful is not the complexity of the gesture but the fact that Ohtani made it, that the player who carries more external pressure than anyone else on that roster, who navigates more public expectation and more media attention than any player in the sport right now, chose in that moment to make someone else's burden his priority. What he said to Freeman, Freeman later told the American media, was not inspirational. It was not a motivational speech or a rehearsed line about moving forward. It was specific. It was honest. And it was, by Freeman's account, exactly what he needed to hear, not because it fixed anything, but because it came from a place of genuine understanding rather than performative comfort. Freeman's voice was unsteady as he described it to the reporters gathered around his locker the following day. He stopped twice. He looked at the floor the way he had looked at it the night before, but differently now, not with the weight of what had happened, but with something closer to gratitude. He didn't have to do that, Freeman said quietly. He just came over. And what he said, I won't repeat all of it, but it was real. It wasn't what you say to someone because you're supposed to say something. It was what you say when you actually understand. What Freeman's account opened up, for fans, for media, for the broader baseball world, was a window into something that professional sports very rarely lets the public see clearly. The locker room after a hard loss is not a place most organizations want examined closely. It is where the professional mask comes down. Where the careful media-trained composure that players maintain in press conferences gives way to something more honest and less polished. Where you see who people actually are when the performance is over and the result was not what anyone wanted. What Freeman described was a locker room that functioned, even in difficulty, because of the kind of relational fabric that teams spend years trying to build and often never fully achieve. Not a locker room of perfect harmony or manufactured positivity, but one where people move toward each other in hard moments rather than retreating into their own corners. That kind of locker room does not happen by accident. It is built, slowly and quietly, through hundreds of small interactions that individually seem insignificant but collectively create something real. Through the player who stays an extra few minutes after practice to talk to someone who is struggling. Through the veteran who does not make the young player feel stupid for asking a question. Through the superstar who walks across a quiet room after a painful loss and sits down next to a teammate who needs someone to sit down next to them. Ohtani has been building that locker room presence since the moment he arrived. Not loudly. Not in ways that generate headlines. But consistently, in the way that matters, through the accumulation of small choices made in the direction of his teammates rather than away from them. Freeman's account was not the first time a Dodger teammate had said something like this publicly. But it was the most raw. The most unguarded. And because it came in the immediate aftermath of a painful loss, because Freeman was still visibly carrying the emotion of what had happened on the field and in that locker room, it landed differently than the carefully considered praise that gets offered in calmer moments. It landed like the truth. While Freeman's account of Ohtani's locker room visit was generating attention across American baseball media, a different story was developing in another corner of the same clubhouse. Tyler Glasnow, removed from the game in the sixth inning in a decision that drew immediate second-guessing from analysts and fans alike, had something to say. Glasnow is not a player who hides his feelings. His expressiveness on the mound, the visible frustration when pitches don't execute, the physical intensity of his competitive engagement with every at-bat, is part of what makes him compelling to watch. He pitches, as the saying goes, with everything showing. And in the press conference after the game, everything was still showing. He was not angry at the decision. That was the first thing he made clear, with an emphasis that suggested he understood exactly how the question was going to be framed and wanted to address that framing directly before it got away from him. He was frustrated. There is a difference, and Glasnow drew it carefully. I felt good, he said. I felt like I had more in me. That's not me saying the decision was wrong, that's me saying what I felt in the moment. And I think any competitor in that situation is going to feel the same way. You want to be out there. You always want to be out there. What Glasnow said next was the part that the baseball world focused on. He spoke about the conversation on the mound, the brief exchange between himself, the pitching coach, and the manager in those few seconds before the decision was made final. He did not characterize it as an argument. He described it as a conversation between professionals who understood each other's position and respected it even when they did not agree. And then he said something that connected his experience to the larger story of that night in a way that no one had quite anticipated. He said that what made the moment manageable, what kept the frustration from becoming something corrosive, was the character of the locker room he walked back into when he came off the mound. That the environment the team had built, the relational fabric that Freeman would describe the next day in the context of Ohtani's locker room visit, was the thing that absorbed what he was feeling and kept it from becoming something that damaged either him or the team. "You go through things in this game," Glasnow said. "The hard ones are easier when you trust the people around you. When you know that the guys in that room are pulling in the same direction, even when it doesn't go the way you want." He did not mention Ohtani by name. He did not need to. Everyone in the room understood what he was describing. Freeman's account and Glasnow's comments, taken separately, are interesting baseball stories. Two players processing a hard loss with honesty and competing emotions. The kind of post-game candor that baseball occasionally produces and that fans rightly value for its rarity. But taken together, they reveal something larger. They reveal a team that is being held together, in the difficult moments that all championship contenders must navigate, by something that no front office can purchase directly and no roster construction can guarantee. A quality of connection between the people in that locker room that allows hard things, double plays, early exits, close losses, to be processed without becoming fractures. And at the center of that quality, in the account of both men, is the same presence. Not loudly. Not with any of the performance that the size of Ohtani's fame might suggest. But consistently, in the quiet ways that build the kind of trust that holds a team together when the results do not go the right way. Freeman wept, slightly, when he described what Ohtani said to him. Not because the words themselves were extraordinary. But because they came at the right moment, from the right person, in the right way. And Glasnow, walking back into that locker room from the mound with the frustration of an early exit still burning in his chest, found an environment that absorbed it. That gave it somewhere to go that was not destructive. That is what Ohtani is building. Game by game, loss by loss, quiet moment by quiet moment. Not just a career. Not just statistics. A locker room. A team. A standard of what it looks like when the best player in baseball decides that the people around him matter as much as his own performance. Here is what no one planned on the night of that loss. Freeman did not plan to share what Ohtani said. He decided, in the moment, that it was worth saying. That the baseball world deserved to know not just what happened on the field but what happened in the room afterward, because that was the part of the story that mattered most to him personally, and he was no longer willing to keep it only to himself. Glasnow did not plan his comments either. He answered honestly, the way he always does, and the honesty opened a door into something he had not fully articulated even to himself before the words came out. And Ohtani planned nothing. He simply walked across a room and sat down next to a teammate who was struggling. The way any good teammate would. The way any person with genuine regard for the people around them would. But because of who Ohtani is, and what he means to this team and to this sport, that simple act became something that a veteran of Freeman's caliber needed to share publicly. Became something that brought tears to the eyes of a man who has been in professional baseball long enough to know the difference between the gestures players make because they are supposed to and the ones they make because they mean them. That is the story beneath the double play and the early exit and the hard loss. That is the story that will last longer than any of those things. The night Freeman was brought to tears in a locker room, not by what happened on the field, but by what happened in the room afterward, is the night that showed, as clearly as anything has, exactly what kind of person is wearing that Dodger uniform. And why, for the people inside that locker room, it means everything.